Hi, my name is Phil Anderson and I'm running for United States Senate to represent Wisconsin. I apologize for last night's video being over 8 minutes long. I did not intend it to be that long. I got a little wound up about a topic that I care very much about, and that is the war machine that our foreign policy has become. I feel very passionately about that. I think a lot of you do too, but it was a little bit too long. My apologies. Tonight's will be much, much shorter. My question for you is, and I've covered this topic before, but I think it's very important to keep it in mind, where do the rights of government come from? Where does the authority of government come from? They can only come from two places. Well, actually three, but two that we're willing to actually consider, I think. One is that it comes from the consent of the governed or from the rights of the governed. So people give up their rights or delegate some of their rights to a government in order to use that authority that they've delegated to accomplish things on behalf of the community. The other one is that the majority somehow has more rights than the individual does. So just by virtue of the fact that there's a majority of people that want to do something, that they have rights over everybody, the majority and the minority included, everybody together. Our country was founded on the principle that people have inalienable rights, and that the only way to form a government was for people to delegate those rights to a government. I think that's pretty clear from our founding documents, and especially in the 10th Amendment, which says that any of the things not specifically delineated in the Constitution and Bill of Rights should go back to the states and, I guess by extension, at least in my interpretation, the local communities. That the federal government couldn't just by virtue of having a majority of delegates, of representatives, of senators, whatever, voting for something, then exert some authority just by virtue of the fact that they are in the majority. And here's why I think that's important. Our government does a lot of things that we can't delegate them the authority to do. As an individual, we can't kill somebody unless it's in self-defense. We can't take somebody from something else. There are a lot of things that our government does that we cannot do. So it's gone past this idea that it only can do the things that we delegate to it, that it can only exercise the authority that we can ourselves exercise. It's gone beyond that to become a situation where by virtue of the majority, it can do anything. So once the majority decides that they're interested in something, whether it's taxation or war or regulating social behavior or anything at all. Once the majority decides, either in Congress or as represented in a group of people, a state legislature, whatever, once the majority decides they do something, then there's very little restraint on that because the Supreme Court is not executing any restraint on that, or certainly our government's not. As a matter of fact, the Republican and Democrat parties argue over who gets to control that out-of-control power of the majority, the tyranny of the majority. Now I throw that word tyranny around not lightly. It is tyranny. If a majority of people can exert their will, can take things from, kill people, do whatever to the minority, and we've seen that throughout our history as a matter of fact, then that's tyranny. And I think that what we have right now in the United States is a tyranny of the majority. Whoever has the majority can exercise rights and privileges and authority over the minority that are way out of scale with what is moral and way beyond what our founders would have ever conceived of as being proper. And it's completely out of control. Libertarians want to return to that era, to that idea, to that time where the individuals have rights and they delegate those rights to the government, and therefore the government only has those rights that are delegated to it by individuals. That's an important point of what we stand for. And it's certainly not what Democrats and Republicans stand for. They stand for having control, majority of control, to enact what they believe is the right thing. In the case of Democrats, it might be social legislation and taxes. In the case of Republicans, it might be the authority to go to war or to give loopholes and benefits to corporations or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what it is. Democrats and Republicans practice abuse of authority because they don't adhere to the original standard that the rights of government only come from the governed. As libertarians and as your senator, I'll stand for that. There's nothing that the government should do that you can't give it the authority to do. That's the basic agreement, the basic composition of what a representative government is, and I'd like to return to that. Thanks, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.